Altered State Adventures, The Mutiny of Baator, Part 4.
And you will see two adventurers with their destiny. Their blades are sharp, with their aim is true. Facing danger, not good for you. Altered State Adventures. Altered State Adventures. Altered State Adventures. Altered State Adventures. Altered State Adventures.
As dawn broke, Pazrael and Krumpet left the crumbling ruin that had offered them shelter throughout the night and continued their journey through the desert. Hours passed like days under the intense sun, and their quench for thirst grew stronger with each passing minute. When they arrived at the dig site, they were shocked to see how extensive it was. Structures had been erected on all sides, hiding the horror that lay at the center. The old man's words had held true. The smell of death greeted them and hung in the air like a low fog. Every tent, awning, or canopy sheltered a long-deceased body, decomposing in the heat and partly eaten by scavenging birds. Those that had not been so lucky as to die from mortal wounds or starvation had been strung up, the corpses gently swaying in the breeze. But none of this prepared them for what they would soon find. As they strode through the remaining bedlam, the structures gave way to a huge circular opening. Within the opening lay an ancient crater, and within that crater lay 100 bodies or more. Blood had covered the sand, saturated it, and then dried in the heat some time ago. Strangely, an eerie wind whisked around the crater as if circling the dead, picking up the red-stained sand and swirling it outward. "Mighty God," expelled Krumpet, shocked by the sight before him.
God, what happened here?
Leaving their camels behind, carefully they stepped over and in between the dead as they made their way toward the center.
Something is strange.
You don't say.
No, I mean, the bodies. They're all reaching for something. Even in their final breath, they strived for the center, craving something. Overpowering desire.
Krumpet accidentally stepped on an arm and briefly lost his footing as the rotten flesh slipped away from bone. Oh, for God's sake! Unnoticed behind them now, as the flesh continued to fall away from the arm, a finger twitched.
So who is this cord you speak of, Krumpet?
Cord? Krumpet absent-mindedly reached for the ruby amulet affixed to his belt. He's the storm god, and the lord of thunder. He revels in strength and prowess on the battlefield. Much like myself, said Krumpet, as he flexed one of his muscular arms. But Pazrael was now too distracted to answer, for they had reached the center of the crater, and in the middle of all the bodies, surrounded by outreaching hands, lay a partially buried object. Krumpet knelt beside the mound of sand and dirt that partially covered the tablet half. Look. What is it?
Don't touch it, Krumpet. Try your best not to even look at it. We must find water.
Water? Krumpet frowned at the initial change of topic, but quickly appreciated the idea. Yeah, good idea, bro. I'm beyond thirsty myself, eh?
The water suppresses dark magic and weakens it.
Ah, I see, said Krumpet disappointedly. And after a short search amidst the tattered sheltering, Pazrael found a small, sealable container.
I've got one,
he exclaimed, emerging sweaty from a nearby tent. Ah, I found water, responded Krumpet, as he bent down to splash the cool liquid over his face.
You mustn't drink that, Krumpet.
Only a sip.
That water has been sat there for untold days. possibly tainted with blood, poison, or worse. Drink at your own peril, my friend.
Krumpet, grumbling to himself, felt mixed emotions. The initial frustration of being unable to quench his thirst was quickly transcended by Pazrael calling him friend. It had been some time since he had heard that word.
Pour it in here,
said Pazrael, holding out the container. Krumpet obliged, and they made their way back to the center of the crater. Unknown to them, dead, bloodshot eyes absently followed their every move. After several attempts to retrieve the buried tablet, Krumpet eventually gave way to frustration and dispersed the loose sand and soil with his hands. Quickly, he grabbed the tablet and placed it within the container. As he did so, a strange, distant, almost inaudible laughter could be heard.
Huh? Did you hear that?
I did,
said Pazrael, placing the lid on the container and sealing it shut. The dig site suddenly took on an unearthly air, as if a dark presence was now with them, looming, foreboding. The desert fell silent as the souls of 100 dead men wrapped around them, hauntingly close, and with an energy so powerful it could almost be touched. Warning them, maybe. Or were they reaching for a desire still coveted from beyond the grave?
I can feel its presence. I can hear it.
Yeah, so can I. Whatever this is, it possesses great evil. Are you strong enough to resist its call, Krumpet?
Of course I bloody can, bro. Can you?
Pazrael, finding the dwarf's low boiling point amusing, smiled and let out a slight chuckle as he nudged the dwarf playfully.
Come on then. We must go to...
But Pazrael's sentence fell away as his stomach filled with dread. The power of the tablet had consumed these men, driven them to madness, driven them to violence, and ultimately it had indirectly killed them all. Now, in their deceased state, the power still ran through their broken corpses. Venom still coursed its way through decomposing veins, and hatred still filled their blackened hearts. Cracked heads lifted. Broken hands and arms tried to gain purchase on the ground as the bodies around them began to rise.
Shit. Krumpet, we must leave now.
Come on, me too. You undead fuck.
Krumpet circled, looking for a path, but in every direction they were surrounded. They stood at the center of 100 rising bodies. Their eyes, even in death, radiated a deadly determination. Their fight for dominance was not done. Their strive for the tablet held one final attempt.
Which bloody way? Just go!
Krumpet swung his axe back and forth at varying speeds and angles as he rushed through the crowd, taking down several bodies with every blurred arc of cold steel. Pazrael, not as effective with multiple opponents up close, followed in his footsteps, able to take down those rising before him at range as arrows flew over Krumpet's shoulders. The undead were slow, weak, and hardly a threat to the experienced warriors, until they had almost reached the end of the circle. There rose a giant, much bigger than the others. At least 7 foot tall and not as far gone. He must have been the last to die. As Krumpet rushed forward, the giant began to bat away bodies in the vicinity, preparing for battle, gaining room for removal. An orange arrow flew over Krumpet's shoulder and embedded itself in the giant's eye. The giant stumbled backwards as Krumpet lunged, jumping high and bringing his axe down hard into the giant's chest with a sputter of foul and blackened blood. Nothing would stop them, at least nothing of this level. They did not turn back to assess the chaos and destruction they had caused, for around them, other bodies were beginning to rise, slowly walking out from behind shelter or emerging from the darkness of open tents.
Let's get the hell out of here, my bro,
said Krumpet, panting slightly.
Yeah, you don't have to tell me twice.
As they left the dig site, the words of the camel guy ran through Pazrael's mind. Looking behind them, the sight lay still once more, as if the dead had finally given up. Their power fading as the tablet gained distance with every step the camels took. This was a minor challenge against a weakened foe. What threats still lay out there beyond the horizon? He pondered the enemy they were yet to face. Situated on the outskirts of the Mosian jungle lay a small town known to its residents as the Haven of Qatar. A local man aimlessly wandered the muddy streets, desperately clutching an object close to his chest. His skin pale and unwashed, his clothes dirty and torn. Passers-by stared at him, crossed the street to avoid him, as they muttered between themselves. The man listened intently, his eyes darting from one location to the next, but they searched for nothing. They focused on nothing. He could feel the presence of the tablet. It begged at him as he closed his grip tighter. Desires spread through him like wildfire. He wanted to do things, bad things. But he held off, desperately clutching on to the man he once was. The good citizen he used to be, the normal man he used to be. Reaching his abode, the man entered, rushed to a nearby loose floor panel, and stashed the tablet underneath before retreating to his usual corner where he sat, rocking in the shadows. Days had passed since he had found it, since he had murdered his friend and that poor adventurer in cold blood. He had drunk himself into a stupor on multiple occasions since then. The empty bottle surrounded him now, littered throughout his home. It had helped him forget, but it did not diminish the sorrow, the guilt, the pain. Visions kept returning, so fresh in his mind, so visceral, he could almost touch them. He reached for his friend, wanting to show affection, wanting to apologize for his actions. But his friend's face turned red with blood. Eyes rolled up into his head as his skin blistered and fell away. The man whimpered as the visions faded, and he hugged his knees closer as he rocked. And then the voices came. The voices, too strong, too loud, could not be ignored. His strength diminished, his will broken. The man leapt for the floorboard, prying at it, fingernails bending backward and breaking, skin ripping. He grabbed at the tablet and rushed for the door. Dusk was setting in as the man walked on autopilot, the tablet guiding him through the town, over muddy paths and onto cobblestone roads, and eventually into the shadow of a local church. The tablet pulled at him, wanting to continue. The harbour was close by, and he could sense that that was its desired location. But somehow, he managed to resist. He opened the door. The bolt clattered loudly as it dropped, and he stepped through into the cooler interior. "Hello, my son," said a voice from the shadows. The man said nothing as he continued to walk forward toward the altar. Candles lined the walls inside the church. Several had been placed on and around the altar itself. The flames danced upon the man's face, exposing deranged contortions. A priest came into focus before him. "Are you okay, child?" The man, his body shaking from fatigue and sleep deprivation, slowly raised his eyes to meet the priest's.
I need...
The priest caught sight of the clutched object in the man's hands.
the tablet,
he whispered.
Help me.
The priest stepped forward, closer to the man.
I expected someone to come. I knew it would be me. This story has been passed down through the ages, from priest to priest. The prophecy of the inevitable reuniting of the tablet.
The man clutched tighter as the priest circled him and pointed up toward a large stained glass window.
You see, these images within the glass depict a story. Follow them. Follow them through, my child. Follow them through to destruction.
With this, the man stepped back, almost unwillingly.
No.
The priest turned to face him.
Give it to me now, son. I can take this burden from you.
The man moved his head, neither a shake nor a nod. The priest stepped forward again, seeing the torment in the man's eyes.
I can see your pain. No,
said the man, stepping backward, visibly shaking now.
Give it to me. It must be destroyed.
The priest reached for the tablet and tried to prise it from the man's grip, but the man became visibly angered, his jaw clenching wildly, teeth showing.
No,
he said, this time with more depth in his voice than one would deem possible. But the priest would not let go, for it was his duty to do so. With as much strength as the frail man could muster, he flung his fist forward and caught the priest on the chin. The priest stumbled backwards in pain as the man turned and ran through the open door and out once more into the darkness. Hey there, this is Marchand Steenkamp, voice of Krumpet van Tonder, and various other characters in the Mutiny of Baator. If you like what we're doing, then you can help us grow by liking and reviewing our content, as well as subscribing to our channel. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.